the trader you become. The most expensive words in trading, just this once. One of the most expensive phrases in trading is only 3 words long. Just this once. Just this once, I'll move my stop. Just this once, I'll take one more trade. Just this once, I'll trade after my cutoff time. Just this once, I'll take a setup that isn't really there. Just this once won't matter. At least that's what I used to tell myself. Looking back, some of the biggest mistakes in my trading career started with those 3 words. The strange thing is that when people think about blowing up an account, they imagine a huge mistake, a reckless decision, a massive position, a catastrophic trade. But that wasn't my experience. The biggest damage rarely started with a huge mistake. It started with a tiny exception, a slightly wider stop, one extra trade, a rule bent just a little, one moment where I convinced myself that this situation was different, and that's what makes just this once so dangerous, because it doesn't sound dangerous. It sounds reasonable. It sounds harmless. It sounds temporary. The mind never says, let's destroy our discipline today. Instead, it says, this setup is different. The market is obvious. I'll only do it this one time. And that's where the trap begins. For years, I thought the danger was the mistake itself. Now I think the danger was something deeper. The danger was what the exception taught me. Because every time I said just this once, I thought I was making a single decision. I thought I was making an exception. What I didn't realize was that I was practicing a habit. I was teaching myself that my rules were negotiable. And once your rules become negotiable, every future decision becomes harder. One day I gave myself a 30-day challenge. For 30 days, I committed to following a strict set of trading rules. No moving stops, no trading after my cutoff time, no adding to losing positions, no emotional rule changes. I knew the temptation would still be there. I knew I would still want to move my stop. I knew I would still want to take one more trade. I knew I would still hear that familiar voice, just this once. And it did show up, almost every day. What surprised me wasn't that the temptation remained. What surprised me was what happened when I stopped obeying it. The voice became weaker, not overnight, not all at once, but little by little. The urge still appeared, but it became easier to sit with it, easier to recognize it, easier to let it pass without acting on it. And that taught me something important. Discipline isn't about making temptation disappear. Discipline is about learning that you don't have to obey every thought that appears in your mind. The voice still says, move the stop. Take one more trade. Stay a little longer. Take the trade. The difference is that now there is a pause between the thought and the action. And inside that pause is a choice. Looking back, I realized something important. Just this once was never really about one time, because every time I said it, it became easier to say again. The first exception wasn't the exception. It was the beginning of a pattern. The first moved stop made the second easier. The first extra trade made the next one easier. The first broken rule made future broken rules easier. What felt like a single decision was actually the start of a habit. When I started reflecting on my biggest trading mistakes, I noticed a pattern. Most of them were not really about trading. They were attempts to escape uncomfortable emotions. When I moved my stop, I told myself I was managing the trade. But looking back, I was trying to avoid accepting a loss. I didn't want to lose money. Even a small amount. A small loss felt bigger than it actually was. Somewhere deep down, losing money felt like failing. It felt like I wasn't making progress. It felt like I wasn't succeeding. As price approached my stop loss, I wanted to avoid the loss. I wanted one more chance for the trade to work. So I moved to the stop. Not because my analysis changed, but because I didn't want to accept the loss. When I took one more trade, I told myself I was working hard. I told myself I was looking for opportunity. I told myself I was learning. But often I wasn't looking for opportunity. I was looking for reassurance. Maybe today's result wasn't enough. Maybe I hadn't worked hard enough. Maybe I could make a little more. And one more trade became another, and another, and another. When I traded after my cutoff time, I often felt like I wasn't finished. Sometimes the trade came easily. Sometimes I made money quickly. And strangely, part of me felt like that wasn't enough, like I needed to do more, like I needed to keep working. So I stayed. And many of my worst decisions happened after I should have been done. When I took random setups, it wasn't because they matched my plan. It was urgency, a fear of missing out, a feeling that I had to act now. That opportunity was disappearing. And once urgency takes over, almost anything starts looking like a setup. The mistake that cost me the most was adding to losing positions. This was the one that closed accounts. It usually started the same way. I didn't want to take a small loss, so I moved the stop. Then I hoped. Then I waited for a pullback. Then I added another contract. Then another. I wasn't trying to make more money. I was trying to avoid accepting reality. I was hoping the market would give me a way out, a path back to break even, a chance to avoid admitting I was wrong. And eventually I learned something painful. I was willing to risk thousands of dollars just to avoid losing 100. Think about that. I was trying so hard to avoid a small loss that I created a much bigger one. That completely changed how I see stop losses. Because now I understand that a stop loss is not punishment. It is protection. Protection from hope, protection from emotional decision-making, protection from the version of me that wants relief more than discipline. But the biggest lesson wasn't about stop losses. It wasn't about overtrading. It wasn't about adding to losers. It was about self-trust. Looking back, the most expensive just this once wasn't the money I lost. It was the trust I lost in myself. Because every time I broke a rule, I taught myself that my own word didn't mean much. I told myself I would exit here. I didn't. I told myself I would stop trading here. I didn't. I told myself I wouldn't move the stop. I did. Eventually, I stopped trusting my own promises. And that was far more damaging than any individual loss. Because trading is difficult enough. It's even harder when you can't trust yourself. The moment that changed everything for me was realizing that every time I said, just this once, I wasn't deciding whether to break a rule. I was deciding what kind of trader I was becoming. That was the real decision. Not whether to move the stop. Not whether to take another trade. Not whether to break a rule. The real decision was whether I would become the trader I told myself I wanted to be. Because every time I broke a rule, I was going against the person I said I wanted to become. At first, it felt harmless. It was only one time. Just this once. But later I realized that just this once was never just once. The first exception became many exceptions. The first broken rule became many broken rules. What I thought was a temporary decision slowly became my normal behavior. And before I realized it, I was going against my rules almost every day. I wasn't just breaking trading rules. I was breaking promises I had made to myself. The account wasn't lost on the day it blew up. The account was lost much earlier. The moment I started negotiating with my rules. Because every time we break a rule, we cast a vote. A vote for the habits we reinforce. A vote for the person we become under pressure. I thought I was making one exception. What I was really doing was practicing a behavior. and eventually that behavior became automatic. Today, the thought still appears. Just this once. It probably always will, but I've stopped treating it like an instruction. Now I see it for what it is: an emotional negotiation, a temporary offer of relief, a suggestion. And I've learned that relief and good decisions are not always the same thing. Maybe discipline is not the absence of temptation. Maybe discipline is hearing the voice, recognizing it, and choosing not to obey it. Because in trading, the most important decision is often not the trade itself. It's whether you become the person who keeps the promises you make to yourself. Because every time you hear those 3 words, just this once, you are casting a vote. A vote for the habits you reinforce, a vote for the standards you accept, a vote for the trader you are becoming. If you've ever moved a stop, taken one more trade, traded after your cutoff time, or broken a rule while telling yourself, just this once, you're not alone. I think every trader eventually faces that moment. The question is not whether the voice appears. The question is whether we choose to follow it. If this video resonated with you, let me know in the comments. What was your most expensive just this once moment? I'd genuinely like to hear your experience. And if you know another trader who might relate to this experience, consider sharing this video with them. Sometimes the most expensive mistakes don't start with a bad trade. They start with a small exception. And if you're interested in trading psychology, discipline, and becoming a more consistent trader, consider subscribing. Because trading is not only a journey of learning the markets, it's also a journey of learning whether we can keep the promises we make to ourselves